Welcome to another episode of The Right Stuff. I've successfully not told my co-host, Jared Longshore, what we're talking about.
All right.
Jared.
Good way to go.
Yeah. I kept it from you. Jared is also not the type to ask, so till he got here. And then I just didn't answer you. So, Jared, first things first, I want to know what do Presbyterians not understand about Baptists? Is there something that they just, like, if you could give something to your Presbyterian now brothers to help them?
I mean, they were before.
But real brothers. You know what I mean? I want to build bridges, but I also want to maybe saw a little bit off.
You're trying to saw stuff off.
But brothers.
Okay.
But if you could say, if you want to understand Baptists, here's what you need to know, what would you say?
First, I'd say, which Baptists are you talking about?
Okay.
Because they're definitely not all the same.
Okay.
So,
not even the same in terms of baptism.
Definitely not. Yeah, not the same in terms of baptism.
Okay. Well, how about you line the Baptists up, and if I close my eyes and threw a rock, which one am I likely to hit? Like, which one is which one are like people most likely going to run into?
You're most likely going to run into just a straight up evangelical Christian.
Yeah.
That buys Crossway books.
Okay.
And is probably cool with the ladies doing the announcements at church.
Sure. Passing out communion maybe or something like
that. Yeah, passing out communion, that kind of thing. You know what I mean?
Right.
It's going to be a strong Getty vibes.
Yes.
Okay.
Church. Yes.
Okay.
You weren't necessarily, that was not your particular, that's not where you came from necessarily, is it?
Right. It's not. So that you have a spectrum from them, that would kind of be the big middle people, then Reformed Baptists. So the more conservative, the more Reformed Baptist, that's that end of the spectrum.
Okay. That's where you came out of.
Yep.
Okay.
That's where I came out of. And not originally. So I just went from like kind of big tent SBC, Southern Baptist Convention stuff, into the Reformed stuff.
Okay.
So that was kind of my journey.
Big tent SBC as in like the Getty world or no?
But mine was more like before that all hit. So I was like traditional.
Chris Tomlin.
Yes, but grew up like early years would have been like just a Baptist hymnal.
Oh, okay.
So just like normal.
Like a First Baptist church.
Like First Baptist church.
Okay.
Tiny town.
Okay.
Central Florida.
Okay.
Sunday school.
Okay.
Wednesday night, Sunday evening, like 8 hours a week at church, like in church proper, getting
8 hours a week is what you said?
Yeah, about 8 hours a week.
But
I tallied it up.
Okay, wow.
So Sunday morning, Sunday night, Wednesday night. That was
Wednesday night youth group?
Yep.
Okay.
Youth choir.
Youth choir.
Starts at 4:30.
Okay. On Wednesday.
On Wednesday.
All right.
It's probably still going.
Okay.
And then you're going to break from that and get some spaghetti dinner.
Okay.
Somebody's going to have that going. And then you're going into youth group, Bible study.
Okay.
And then you're playing basketball after that.
Okay. We've set the stage.
Okay.
A Presbyterian, maybe a coworker at NSA, a co-laborer is just like, I'm trying to communicate to a Baptist right now, and it just seems like we're not speaking to one another.
Yeah.
What do you tell him?
Yeah, it's a very fun question too, because the Presbyterian world is small. Right. So if you like,
he's the weird one.
It's still, I mean, I still think it's weird when I come across a true blue. Like, somebody recently posted over here some of my preaching, and they said, we love like guys that used to be Baptists and then are now Presbyterians.
Okay. That's very nice.
But that's like almost everybody.
Oh, sure.
So to run into like the true, either like a Dutch Reformed or a PCA type or OPC type, they're actually like quite rare. Yep. So the guy you've got asking me the question is so rare, but it is very fun because they don't quite understand what the Baptists are up to. And the Baptists are like a people all about the Bible. There's this like, we're a Bible people, kind of linear. So think linear.
As opposed to what?
As opposed to broad spectrum, abstracting, systematic, typological.
These are people that just open up the good word.
Yeah. I mean, the Baptist, if you say something about like circumcision and baptism, they'd be like, well, those are two different things.
Right.
You know?
No,
why,
that's good.
Why would you? So, because this is, I mean, it probably you never like even thought about it much. You just like, because when I was reading about circumcision, you know, that was an active obedience of the Old Testament people.
Correct.
And, you know, yes, baptism's that, but all sorts of things are that. So there's this linear focus, emphasis on the Bible. They're just going to be like gospel through and through.
Yep.
So gospel centered. I remember growing up in the church I grew up in, and there's an altar call every Sunday.
Yep.
Pastor comes down, stands at the front while you sing, you know. And man, I was in college before I got to a worship service that didn't do that.
Okay.
And I was thinking like,
what a missed opportunity.
How's anybody going to get saved? I mean, I was like, I had a question is like it's probably 18, 19, 20, something like that. So gospel is going to be like right there at the heart of everything. And that'll be in the preaching, that'll be in like the sentiments of the people, how they think about Christianity, that kind of thing. And then the weird one is going to be the Reformed guys are pure church people. So purity of the church is like the thing.
Tell me about that. What is that?
Well, first, what's weird about it is like the big, I'll back into and give you the content.
Okay.
What's weird though is like the big Eva Baptist world, which we were talking about before.
The Gettys.
They still have all of the sacramental and ecclesiological practices that are distinctly pure church separatist, but they don't know, like they don't even think about it that way.
Big B Baptists.
Big B Baptists. That's why you have the, you have like fire truck baptisms for 2-year-olds at the big Baptist church. They're still baptizing upon profession, but they've lost what it really means to be a Baptist historically, which is the pure church. Separatist idea. So 17th century England, very wild time. There's the Church of England, and then there's Puritans who want to clean up the Church of England, and then there's separatist Puritans who want to clean it up by leaving it. Those are your categories. First guy, his name was Henry Jacob. He's kind of like the first guy to be a Puritan and say, I'm leaving Mother Kirk. I'm leaving the Church of England. And all of his fellow Puritan friends were like, what? You're doing what? Like, you can't do that. And he denied the visible church. Okay, so there is no visible church. There's the invisible church. You're in it. I'm in it. John Calvin's in it. Martin Luther's in it. Okay, but this idea of a visible church that's on the ground that
people are in the people that are in the building, everybody that you can see with your eyeballs. Is that the visible church?
Yes, but it's more like everyone you could conceivably see with your eyeballs.
Okay.
So the visible church doesn't stop at the borders of your own sanctuary. Okay. So you're in the visible church with the Anglicans and
that
the Methodists.
Bad news to people.
right.
Yeah,
Okay.
Yeah.
Welcome to not being a Baptist. If it's too much bad news, then you can go the Baptist route.
Okay.
And you'll still be in the visible church with them. You just won't acknowledge them. Okay. So this is like the instincts.
You're saying your Central Florida church or the First Baptist down the street, they can look at a direct line to, what'd you say that guy's name was? Henry Jacobs.
Henry Jacob. I think so.
Okay.
And Henry Jacob baptized infants. So it's a separatist Puritan impulse that predates the baptism of believers alone.
Okay.
Because Henry Jacob pulls out and does his own thing, and says the church is a matter of voluntary association.
Okay,
very interesting. So
as opposed to
being Presbyterian, if you ask a Presbyterian guy, hey, when did you join the church?
Yes.
He's going to say, well, I was like Timothy, like when did I become an American citizen? Or, right?
Yes.
Like, when did I become my father's son?
Right.
Weird question.
Right.
Okay, so that's
what Henry Jacob is like, you need to have, there needs to have been a moment of voluntary association.
Yeah. And really the church is getting reduced to that. So like that's what it is. It's an assembly of individuals who have chosen to be there, right? Which is very interestingly connected, like social contract theory, like some of the same ideas about what constitutes a nation.
These are accidentally overlapping, or do you think?
I think it's in the water, or soon to be in the water. Okay. And it could be. Well, I think I'll say at least by mid-late 1600s up to early 1800s, that whole era has this kind of vibe. Okay. So Henry Jacob leaves the Church of England and does his own thing, and is doing it for the sake of purity, because the church, and it really did need to be cleaned up, needed to be fixed up. And then the church keeps baptizing infants, and all of a sudden the people there start to think,
this isn't adding up.
We can't smuggle in the little ones.
They just go where I go.
That haven't had a very clear, publicly identifiable work of the Spirit in their lives such that they will be holy. We can't have them in the church before that. And so the church is actually called the Jacob Lathrop Jesse Church, because those three men, Henry Jacob is the first. Jacob
sounds
Lathrop.
Like a law firm.
It does sound like a law firm. Yeah. That's the first kind of historic, call it Reformed Baptist, particular Baptist. Sometimes they go by that title, Calvinistic Baptist. Like basically like not Anabaptist on the continent, like in England. Jacob Lathrop Jesse Church, early 1600s. That's like the first one. And it makes perfect sense because it's doing the same thing Henry Jacob did. So for the sake of purity, we're delaying baptism. We want to see evidence of regeneration, or we want to have a credible profession of faith, and then we'll baptize.
Because that assumption, they could have, I assume they're thinking the assumption of just bringing these people along is more of the same kind of thing that the Church of England was doing, and that's what leads to
the rot.
The rot.
The rot. Yep. This is a standard, classic Credo Baptist thing.
So then fast forward me to the 2000s.
Yeah,
they don't know anything about that.
Right.
Most don't.
Right. But they don't. But the
Spirit is there. You're saying. Or is it just like, this is Americana, this is apple pie?
It is. I think it's more Americana and apple pie. It's just, and now like if you ask why, now what does map is the individualism.
Okay.
The pure church thing, I think, is kind of washed away in Big Eva Baptist world. I don't know how concerned Big Eva Credo Baptists are with keeping the church remarkably pure.
Okay.
They don't really practice church discipline. They don't suspend from the table. They don't excommunicate.
Okay.
So that piece is gone. But included in what Henry Jacob was up to was this emphasis on the individual, and the idea of any kind of covenant corporate reality applied to the church was lost when they said, no, we're going to wait until this individual testifies to the work of the Spirit in his or her life, and that will be entrance into the church. So I think that kind of that individualism's still there. I also think the separatist thing is still there, which maps on to like the American War for Independence. So there's a strong like
separatist, as in like still on the purity principle. So we're separating.
Yeah. So maybe on the purity principle, but it's like the church doesn't do that kind of thing. But it's just kind of like American to say,
okay. You're saying
it's time to go our own way. Like, you know, we've been in this law firm, and it's time we're going to venture out on our own.
I wonder what's on the other side of the mountains.
Yes. Okay. So the pioneer going west, that kind of sentiment, it was certainly there, early 1600s. And the idea of like visible unity to a Baptist is just going to sound like rank liberalism.
Say one more time.
The idea of visible unity.
Yep.
Right? Like unity of the church. One bride.
By that, it would be the Anglicans.
Yeah.
The Presbyterians down the street. The Baptists. Who's something, somebody that would really scare the Baptists, like the Roman Catholics. You're saying them presented as a front of this is the church of Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
That you're saying
liberalism. Because
compromises are being made here.
Yeah. Which is like why what is it that there's a film that Denzel's in, the Western Magnificent Eight, Magnificent Seven.
He was in the remake of the Magnificent Seven.
Okay. Well, the one dude is a Baptist.
Okay.
Oh, it's just fantastic.
Okay.
The cocky one, the one that's always like firing off his gun all the time.
Okay.
And it's a wonderful little storyline.
Okay.
Because it's true. Like that's what makes them like you would always want one of those on your team.
Okay.
Like he's ready to go. He might leave you at any moment. Like you know what I mean? Like you need. So he's not like the leader exactly. He's like, but he's the.
I wish I knew who we were talking. I don't remember.
He's your Huckleberry. Okay. Like the dude is like ready to go. He's ready to fight,
but could also just be ready to leave.
You're definitely going to be ready to leave, right?
All right.
He's definitely probably going to take half your guys from you and leave you both stranded, and then both of your troops are going to die in the West.
Okay.
Like so, you don't have the unity piece, but you do have the.
If he's here, he's here for a good time.
Oh yeah, he's definitely there for a good time.
Okay. So you in recent years have made a move to Presbyterianism. Mm-hmm. You left the Calvinistic Reformed portion of the Baptist world. Just what has that been like? You mentioned. I mean, are there things that whether it's communication between the two, and you're like, oh, that is a stumbling block. I kind of get that now. Are there things you've noticed like that? What are some of those?
Yeah, it's very interesting, man. I mean, it's like what's interesting. People, the caricatures are, the Baptists have the Bible, the inerrancy of the Word of God and Christ, and the Presbyterians are smart.
Okay.
It's like that's the caricature.
Okay.
And I think it's kind of like not terribly true. Like it's.
Oh, okay.
I mean, it's somewhat true.
Okay.
But I became a Presbyterian and found a lot of people that had no clue about why they were Presbyterian.
Totally.
They didn't understand it. And a lot of the Reformed Baptists that, at least the crew I was running with, that knew exactly why they were Reformed Baptists and know the history and all that stuff. So that was interesting. That's one dynamic that I see at play.
And you're saying that isn't so far off from the truth, or you're saying it is actually light years away from the truth?
I'm saying it's highly suspicious that that's actually right on the money. Like it's definitely true, but it's like true with qualifications.
Yeah.
And some of that is because I landed in Moscow Presbyterian, which is
not a lot of Presbyterians are not claiming the Moscow Presbyterian.
Right.
So, yeah.
Right. And it's very interesting, but like the ones that have done their homework actually know that Moscow's legit.
They know ball.
They like whether they want to say it or not. I don't remember who the guy is. Is it Mark Jones? I think it's Mark Jones.
Yeah.
Pretty sharp guy out there.
There is a Mark Jones. Yes.
Just published a piece on the internet, and Joe had faked everybody was saying
he was a Credo Baptist according to this.
And Jones is, what Jones is writing there, and I only like glanced over the article, but it was the same. Like it was a very similar sentiment. I'd have objections to certain things in the article, and I would say certain things that weren't in the article. But that was like an example. There's these moments where it's like, oh, right. And then I found that several of the Presbyterians that are in Moscow, they're just Credo Baptists in their worldview and their thinking.
I do want to talk about the horseshoe. I do want to get there to the. I'm wondering. I guess we should just do it now. But yeah, have you seen a horseshoe thing where you're on the other side, but I see all of the same spirit at work here that you just feel like you left over there?
Ask me again.
How about like with certain Presbyterians? I felt like maybe this is where you're headed, so you can tell me if it wasn't. But like, is there a Baptistic spirit in certain Presbyterians?
Oh, definitely.
So yeah, you left that. That's the horseshoe thing where you're just like, oh yeah, I feel like I just left here, but you guys are this way?
Yeah. Oh yeah. Lots of, I think lots of them. I think a lot of the people in the PCA are like that.
Okay.
They just haven't, and that's not I'm not trying to like throw shade at them.
Sure.
I'm just saying,
you recognize
when you're a Reformed Baptist and you're like working on covenant a lot and like the nuances of the Abrahamic and the Mosaic and the debate with John Owen on the Mosaic, like you're just in the nitty gritty because, everything's at stake if you're gonna be
you're this close
right
to
or
the
wrong
line.
about this.
Yeah.
And I think that if I grew up in like a PCA household, a moderate, Tim Keller, like whatever, I don't think you would ever like go diving into the covenant deal. So you meet a lot of these people that definitely have Baptist instincts that are basically just Presbyterian because that's how they were raised. Right. And there's a lot of Baptists that are like that too.
We've euphemized through this, but when you say Baptistic instincts, and basically what I was saying, what do you mean by that?
I mean, they think of themselves mainly as solitary individuals. They're not thinking about covenant. They're not really working through the covenant promises of God. Like, what are the promises of God to our children to 1,000 generations? And are they legit? Are they covenant or not? And what role does baptism play in actually signing and sealing that? And are they in the visible church, as the Westminster Confession of Faith says? Are the children in the visible church? So the Westminster Confession of Faith is explicit that the visible church is the kingdom of God, and is constituted of all professors of the true religion and their children. And you're just like, well, there you go.
Yeah.
So how are you going to reconcile this? You must be born again to enter in the kingdom of God. Like you're going to have to deal with that because your confession, unless you're taking an exception to that part of the Westminster Confession, says that the little kiddos are in the kingdom of God and they're in the visible church. The kingdom of God is the visible church. So those kind of ideas that are just Westminster Presbyterian are not going to be prominent or present in the minds of several of the Presbyterians in America. I remember I was talking to a Scottish Presbyterian, which was always dangerous because
I think we're about to hear Jared's Scottish.
Gets you. Oh yeah,
Scottish take. So everybody buckle up.
And he's like, "Oh, Jared, the American Presbyterians have lost their heritage." And I was like, "Okay,
that's awesome. We should get this guy for the pod."
Oh man, he was great. So yeah, that's that.
Okay.
But you asked about the Baptists. So there's that question. I mean, I was just poking into the idea of some of the caricatures, and again, I think that's fairly legit, even historically accurate. But it's also, but I just would want to be like, just beware. There's really smart people in both camps, totally. And then there's really like normals.
Yeah. I grew up in the non-denom world, which is like the world where if you were to say, "Are you a Baptist?" they would be like, "No."
Right.
Those people who are like, they don't like dancing, they don't like cards.
Right.
They don't want the baggage of Baptists, but in all intents and purposes are very much Baptists, practicers.
And I love them,
Totally.
The visible church, I love them all, but the non-denoms really are the worst. It's like, come on. Like, I mean,
so how about
your
this?
people, dude? I was like, pick a side, bro. I was like,
no.
Are you a Baptist? No, I'm not. But we're not.
No, of course.
Like, do you baptize babies? No.
No.
Okay, so you're a Baptist.
Correct. Correct. Now,
welcome to the team.
I want you to react to what I heard growing up, and I think I am doing them justice. So it's not. We're all fair here on the right stuff. The right stuff is being fair. Baptism is a confession of faith. In Jesus's day, it's something where if you were to go get baptized, it would be done in mixed company. Plenty of people who are not Christians are seeing this baptism. It's basically an act of a public profession, such that it has stakes to it. And how blessed are we, essentially, that we get to do it in front of a body of believers in a city that's relatively Christian or mostly Christian, and it's a public profession of faith. Is that true, Jared?
Yeah. So let's start with yes.
Okay. That you gave is not.
Yeah. We can start with yes, but we're missing an important piece.
Okay.
Like if you only say that about baptism, then it fits within Carl Trueman's infamous Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self. Okay. So
they don't know yet if that's bad or not. It's just like, is that good? Okay.
It's bad.
Okay.
All right. But that Trueman's book, which was very, very helpful, and actually was one of many weird books that kind of shook me and changed my doctrine. Some of the lines he said in there was very interesting. Like our atomized selves. He's like, we've gone from we used to dance with each other, like corporate dances, right?
Balls of sorts.
Balls. And he's like, now we dance at each other. We gyrate in a nightclub, at each other, because we're atomized. So we're no longer corporate together. Another little anecdote was, he's like, pre-modern, like before the Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self, institutions were institutions were entities that would mold and shape us. Right? So you have an institution like NSA. Like, can I specialize? Like, nah.
Right. But I would like specialize. Like, can I, Jared, get a history degree here?
Can I get some tracks? I need some different tracks,
A literature degree.
And it's just like, no. So we do like one thing.
A business degree.
It's a liberal arts and humanities classical Christian college. This is what it is. Right. And it forms and shapes the students. That's the old model. He's like, but in the new model, the Rise and Triumph of the Modern Self has turned institutions into platforms upon which we express ourselves.
Okay.
So that's like what a platform is for. It's there for me to stand, or an institution, an organization of any kind. It's there for me to express myself. So if baptism is only a profession of faith, a testimony, it's me expressing to all of you what God has done in my life.
And maybe at great risk to themselves, Jared.
Yes.
Yeah,
definitely not. That's like, that all fits within that paradigm.
Okay.
But if you look at the Second London Baptist Confession of Faith, it was published in 1689 in the Glorious Revolution. Or you look at the Westminster Confession of Faith, you're going to see the exact same language, that baptism is a sign and seal. Okay. And at least I know that sign and seals in the Westminster, but you're gonna have it's a sign to the party baptized. You're gonna find that language in both confessions, which was very interesting to me when I got into it, because now that doesn't fit this evangelical paradigm that you and I both grew up in. Like, you're like assigned to the party baptized, assigned to the person.
Now, to a normal, when they hear that doesn't, maybe it tracks, maybe it doesn't. Say more about it. I mean, like, to a normal, when they hear that, it sounds like it's in a confession. Boring. You know what I mean? Jared, my church has a smoke coming out of it. You're ruining the mood. But like, what does that mean?
I mean, if it was like the Old Testament version of smoke, it'd be awesome. Right. If it was manufactured smoke,
it is
not awesome.
Not awesome.
Which actually, that we just stumbled across a parallel. Like, That is the thing. That is the thing. The smoke, we made a smoke machine express itself. So we manufactured it. Right? When what God did in the Old Testament was bring it down. Like, so it came down from heaven and filled the glory cloud, filled the temple.
Yes.
Same thing with baptism. It's a sign and seal from God. So God is actually doing something in the baptism. He is signing and sealing his people.
Okay.
And it really does its thing. Like, it really works. It really signs and seals them.
Okay.
Now, so if you press the Baptist question, what made it real? Like, what made baptism real? Was it regeneration that preceded the baptism? Was it genuine saving faith in the heart, which preceded baptism? Like, that's so that's what made it real. And if that's true, then you're in the pickle of somebody comes to you and says, I didn't mean it.
Right.
And what are you going to do? So right there, you're going to find out what kind of Baptist you are.
Okay. Because
one Baptist is going to be like, you took a vow, or whatever. They're going to say, yeah, it was. You're just confused.
Okay.
Because you get in a weird spot because you're like, well, should I believe you now?
Or should I believe you back then?
Should I believe you back then? Yeah. Should I believe you now? Should I baptize you? And so people will baptize those people again because
if they change their mind again.
If they change their mind, because the creme de la creme, like the thing that makes it real, is genuine saving faith or regeneration preceding the baptism. So not all Baptists are there. I think you're going to find them scattered, but there are certainly those that are going to say, well, we need to baptize this person. If it's been,
would you say
5 years? I mean, they're not going to do it like the week after kind of thing,
because evidence needs to be seen that you mean it this time.
Mm-hmm. But then that becomes like, if that's okay. So if some Baptist goes, well, that's not me. Okay, then what made it real? Like, what made it count? That becomes the question. And then you're at least starting to see, it's a sign and seal from God. And it was real. It did something. You can all deal with what do you do with people that fall away or things like that.
One thing too I noticed was by making it about the public profession of faith, there's always a kind of like a member of your church that's sort of like, so do I have to? Or, is this required?
Oh, yeah.
And I know it does seem important, but also it's probably not required. Or, and if it doesn't, like, there was a guy on the cross once, the thief didn't get baptized. There's plenty of, it's not, is it important? What would you, I feel like that happened a lot when it's just a profession of faith, high stakes, you got to do it in front of the people. What in maybe this world, how would you respond to somebody that says, like, maybe it's not?
There's a cool story from in Augustine's Confessions. If I get the names right, Simplician is, I think he was somewhat of like a father figure to Ambrose. So somebody, fact check me. And there's this other guy, Victorinus, and Victorinus is like a famous rhetorician. I think he even had statues of him, that kind of thing. And Augustine was a big deal. He was up into his 30s, I think, before converted and baptized. But he's the same way. Like, just I don't know if there were statues of Augustine like Victorinus, but Victorinus and Simplician are friends. Simplician's a Christian, Victorinus isn't. And eventually Victorinus gets worn down and comes to Christ and goes to Simplician and says, you can count me among the saints. And Simplician just responded to him and goes, yeah, whatever. Like, not until you're in the church, not until you're baptized. Like, so the potency of this visible church that I'm talking about and what role it's playing in your mind and in your actions.
Yep.
For Simplician, he's like, so like what? Like,
Like you're
maybe you ate some bad turkey. Like he just,
okay.
Whereas evangelicals are going to so quickly say, oh yeah, you're good, and baptism, well, whatever, take or leave it. It's just the opposite for Simplician. Like you come and tell me you're now a Christian. Okay, whatever, but it doesn't mean anything. So like, what?
Like, are you in the game or are you in the game?
Are you in the game?
Yeah.
Are you in the game? So it's like you're either on the Chicago Bulls wearing the jersey or you're not.
Yeah.
So I mean, we get it in that round. Like you can sit in the second row and say, "P.S. I'm on the Chicago Bulls," but no one thinks you're on the Chicago Bulls, and you're really not on the Chicago Bulls. You have to have the jersey to be on the Chicago Bulls, that kind of thing. And this is where the confession will talk about outside of the church, there's no ordinary means of salvation. And the evangelicals choke on it.
One more time, say it.
Outside of the church, there's no ordinary means of salvation. And so an evangelical reads that and says, excuse me? Like, I thought we left Rome. That's the first thing that the stronger types are going to say. And the other one's just going to be confused because, I don't know if I was baptized or not. And they're in college and they're bouncing around. They're not members anywhere. They're not actually under authority anywhere. That kind of thing. So yes, baptism is far, far more important than
it would seem too to really like take out a leg on like a really important piece of the Americana apple pie version of not only like church and baptism, like and by that I mean just like the testimony is a huge part of that, and testimonies that are told that are like seem like a lot of means of salvation is like in biker gangs, Jared. Like I feel like that's an important part of the whole thing. Are you guys rejecting that?
Yeah, pretty much.
Yeah,
pretty much on that. So,
yikes!
Just kind of.
So that'll be the stinger for this, so we can get some headlines here.
Yeah, I mean,
and is that what that quote is addressing? Like, is it like there's no ordinary means of salvation outside the church? For the normie, that means what? The church is where salvation happens. Inside the walls.
The church is the saved people of God. The church is the bride of Christ. You are members of the body of Christ, and the church is the body of Christ.
You don't mean the four walls, do you?
No, I don't mean the four walls.
Because that's not what the church is.
Right.
There was a lot of that.
There was a lot of that.
Yeah.
There was a lot of that, which is like, that's just another classic. So like spirituality. I just read this quote from Chesterton. I can't remember exactly how he put it, but it was basically, he was talking about the all of the emphasis. I don't know if it was on science or he's like, we were afraid of making like materialists, but we did even worse. We made spiritualists. And basically he was just kind of saying, you've turned spirituality into just nothing, and you've also like spiritual is immediately equated with moral and good and upright. It's like bad spirits, fallen angels, there's all that stuff. So that if there's no visible church, which is what Henry Jacob, going back to Henry Jacob, it's what he held. The only church is the invisible church.
Yep.
And there's individuals in it, but it's not a corporate entity. Okay.
Because why? Because the corporateness, so many things can squirm in there, or like what? Like,
yeah, I don't know. I think, oh my goodness, there's probably tons of good answers, historical, philosophical answers to your question about what was going on that made Henry Jacob do that, and that caused that to sell, at least to some degree, like up until like, 1689 Glorious Revolution, where it could really kind of come into full force. But I think it's probably working its way throughout the 1600s. And we still speak that language, because if you get up there at one of these evangelical churches and you say the church is not the four walls, everybody just loves it.
Right.
But underneath, what they really love is like, there's nothing objective. Like, it's you and Jesus. It's just your spirit and Jesus.
Right.
I think that's like baked into the broad acceptance of that claim,
Yeah. And to me, it's like one of those claims where I feel like it's an automatic, guilt thing, because everybody's just like, well, that's where I think church is. I think it's like, that's where we drive to every time. So it kind of feels like it's like, it's a 3-pointer you can make every time, is like everybody in the room's like, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah.
Yeah.
Because I did drive here thinking that.
Yeah.
I drove to this building to come here. You say that. I am guilty of that.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. So back to the initial question. Is it when a Presbyterian and Baptist are talking together, is this personality type differences?
Oh yeah. Yeah, there's personality type differences.
Okay.
I mean, that came out with Naselli when Naselli was here.
Yeah.
We did the Naselli thing, and we're talking about how to read a book.
Personality for sure.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
And so that attention to detail, Andy, I'm not talking about Andy anymore because I don't know where Andy would shake down on this, but I think like line upon line, those kind of like careful exegesis, that kind of thing. Those are, and you're going to find it if you bring me a Presbyterian that has careful exegesis, you have not.
You're speaking in general.
You haven't disproved my point.
You're speaking in general.
This is absolutely the case. Like this is the way. This is the way that mind kind of works, and therefore will be that way in relation. Usually, not like we did an episode with Forrest Dickinson. Not terribly interested in that kind of stuff. It's going to be more about people of the book
and color wavelengths.
Yes.
Yes.
Probably not.
Okay. Would you say, especially if a Presbyterian and a Baptist started talking about baptism, where do you see a lot of how much of that conversation, let's say they got someone from the Calvinistic Reformed side, so it's the best of the best the Baptist has to offer, which I think would they agree with? I think I'm trying to represent themselves fairly. They send their best giant in with, let's say, our best giant,
I was wondering if the Presbyterian was going to be David. I was thinking you're loading the deck. You're loading the deck a little bit.
How much of that conversation will be speaking like one for one at the topic, or how much of it will be speaking past one another, do you think?
Well, it just kind of depends on if they're up to speed.
Okay.
I mean, if they're up to speed, they watch like me and James White's debate.
Okay.
Or
that is a standard of this debate. That debate. Yes.
I mean, it's kind of like
this conversation. If they've not seen that,
yeah. I think he got. I don't know if Doug's just debated James straight up on baptism or not. He did Paedo communion. But anyways, there's tons of debates out there. It's going to be more about whether he's up to speed on the conversation. I think the two guys, it's all going to be a conversation about the covenant. It's going to be a conversation about the relationship between the Old and New Testament. And Abraham's children got the sign of circumcision, which was a sign of the covenant, which Abraham received, a sign and seal of the faith that he had before he was circumcised.
And this has been a conversation more about contextually around the literal debate. Would you say, has the conversation, how long have you been paying attention to the conversation between Presbyterians and Baptists about baptism? 15 years? 20 years?
What am I? So I'm 40. So
wow.
20. When did I really get like dialed in and paying attention?
22? 15,
no.
15 plus years. How about that?
Call it maybe 15.
Okay. Over the 15 plus years, probably. Who knows? Have there been inflection points? Is it the same exact conversation that was happening 15 years ago?
No, definitely not. There's been a huge inflection point, and the huge inflection point, this is pretty broad out there, but the huge inflection point is the 1689 Federalists, which are...
Like they showed up to the Baptist Party.
They showed up to the Baptist Party, making a lot of sense, citing a lot of resources, actually
Are they the Baptist-Presbyterians?
They're the Baptist-Presbyterians.
They're the smart guys, but there's only a few of them.
For sure.
Yeah.
Those are the dudes that really know what's up. And the generation that came before them, the Reformed Baptist generation that came before them, also very smart dudes, but didn't have access to the arguments. So there was a real Josiah moment, like a recovery of the law, like we found in the Baptist world.
Okay.
If you're just like Christian American, this is probably still a small deal. But if you're in these worlds, finding out that there were actually 17th century English Baptists that were arguing certain positions on covenant and conceiving of the Abrahamic covenant in a certain way, in following from that perception of the Abrahamic covenant, you would not baptize babies. That kind of covenantal argument that was going on back there in the 17th century, it was unique, and it was recovered probably, 10 to 12 years ago. So, yeah, that was a big deal. And I was involved in that, certainly, and talking with the people that were getting into it, and it was opening up doors that resulted in me becoming Paedo-Baptist.
As we wrap up here, I mean, where do you see are these inflection points like black swan moments, like recovering something that's been lost? I mean, what's the next inflection moment, do you think?
In this particular conversation? I don't know. What's weird, this is another thing about the Credo Baptists and Paedo Baptists. People talk about like Credo Baptists keeping the gospel, protecting the gospel, Paedo Baptists building institutions, families, longevity, that kind of thing. And again, that caricature is pretty true. Baptist, country, small, redneck, Presbyterian,
suspicion of organized.
Yeah, Presbyterian, classical education, those kinds of things. But what's crazy is like, I went to the Southern Baptist Theological Seminary, and it's huge.
The biggest seminary in the world, Jared.
Biggest seminary in the world. Moeller lives in a mansion right next door.
Right there.
I mean, thing is sweet. you're like,
all the Dr. Pepper you could ever have want in there, probably.
Rock on. You know what I mean?
Diet
like,
Coke. Dang.
And then
shoot. Should we do an edit? All the Diet Coke you could want in there, probably. That's for producer Elliot.
So
fix.
And then you get, tapping around the SBC, you find out it's like, I think it's like billions. I mean, it's
the B word.
I think it's the B word.
Not the
fact
M.
Check me again.
Not the M.
Fact check me again. But yeah, I'm talking about there is significant cash flow, and if you become president of
into an institution,
it's the Southern Baptist Convention, which we can do a whole nother episode on the Southern Baptist Convention and what it is and what it's not.
Okay.
It's it's one of the biggest denominations. Yeah, I called it a denomination. For other people that don't want to say it's a denomination, it is. But if you become the president of that entity, you'll be in the White House, like, quick.
It's a powerful institution.
Is there anybody that's like, if you're going to be the presiding minister of the PCA, is anybody thinking like, I'm going to get that spot because I got
the presiding minister of the PCA? Go.
No idea. No idea. But I think it's Clint Presley in the SBC.
It is.
Who's swole. Way to go, Clint. He's a big old strong fella. He's almost as strong as Raymond Ibrahim, who we had. But anyways, you look at all this stuff and you go, what's going on? Like, so
the separatist movement,
the people that are separatists, the people that are saying we want a big wall of division between church and state, are also the Baptists that are like, I've always said, they're sneak around the back door. So like you say that in the big meeting, but then like you're the one that has like elevator access to the Oval Office on the inside. I mean, the ERLC was a huge lobbying organization. Who knows how much cash flow worked through there. So when it comes to like what's coming,
Sure.
I think the Baptists can look and like kind of chuckle and be like, we're the people that are going to be like, we're going to keep up the pure church thing. We're going to keep baptizing people that grow up and profess faith in the Lord. I think if there is a long-term recovery, I think it's just going to have to be labored for and worked for. Like, say, really explain what the covenant is to people and cause them to rethink. We all wanted to rethink the system when Kamala was viable. But right now, there's pretty strong, like, with Trump and Vance in the future, the Baptist thing will work.
Yeah.
Like, it will keep cooking.
But under like Biden, it's like, how do I keep these ideas away from my children? You know, like all of a sudden, you start batting down the hatches in a different way.
Yeah, and it's also like it's kind of like inescapable patriarchy, because like when it falls apart and we go to war, or when we get those, COVID was that way. I mean, COVID was a perfect example of that. All of a sudden, all the tribes come out. So all the patriarchs, all the homes come out. All of a sudden you have like fathers speaking for what their homes are going to be doing in these conditions. Like, and it's like, whoa, it's like, you just feel like all that Hebraic history, all that covenantal history come out, it's like, dude, we are like ready to go.
Yeah.
But, when things are smoother, you just, that doesn't come out as strongly. So I think that we're in it for an interesting 8 years.
Okay.
4 to 8.
It does always seem, if you hear about someone crossing over, I feel like maybe 8 times out of 10, 9 times out of 10, Baptist is coming over. Did you often hear about Presbyterians coming over?
No, I think it's legit to say that's more rare.
Yeah.
More rare. It doesn't, I know of instances in which it's happened.
Okay.
So it's not like it's never been done. Okay. But I do think that's far less.
When it happens for a Presbyterian, what do you think it is? What do you think the linchpin is when they swim that way?
It's a good question, and I don't know.
I feel like it has to be the spirit of like, I was a cultural Christian, and I was sort of swept up into a Puritan moment.
Yeah, I think that could be the case. I think there could be a genuine, like, Presbyterians have to deal with Jeremiah 31. So you have to deal with Jeremiah 31, the new covenant, and then that's repeated over.
Just like it's newer than I thought.
It's newer than I thought. And what does this mean? They shall all know me from the least of them to the greatest of them. Now, that was probably the best part of the debate I did with James, is because I cited how Jeremiah uses that same idiom like 3 or 4 other times in Jeremiah.
Okay.
And every time he uses it, from the least of them to the greatest, he's speaking about a reality that is pervasively but not exhaustively true of a given community. So that phrase actually means no, not literally each and every single one. It means pervasive.
Okay.
But anyways, that's an honest Presbyterian that's really working through Jeremiah 31 and Hebrews. If they buy into a Baptistic interpretation of that text, then they can start to view all of the other texts that need to get worked around you can find other interpretations, but that's going to be kind of like the chief spot.
Last question. Is there a greater rivalry in the game right now than Baptists and Roman Catholics?
In Christendom?
In Christendom. Is it the most one-sided rivalry going right now?
What do you mean one-sided?
I don't know. I never hear really Roman Catholics talk about Baptists, but
oh, you mean? Oh, yeah.
I hear Baptists talk about Roman Catholics a lot.
Yeah, I don't even know. I think that if we were to go back to like the Reformation,
okay,
and sit through some sermons from Calvin,
sure,
like nothing would be railing against
Sure.
the whore of Babylon more than those Protestants. And I think Baptists, it's still just not a threat. Like they'll use it, like they'll do it because you're right that sentiment is there. But usually that's because they think that people that become Presbyterians are going to become Roman Catholics. So that's like when they'll say something about it.
It does smell of Catholicism.
But I don't know that it's a real,
all right.
Other than maybe James White, he's probably done a lot of debates. I don't know how hot that thing is.
All right. Very well. Thank you, Jared, for giving us the lay of the land.
You bet.